Well, welcome back to Becoming Emotionally Available. Today, I want to talk about something that I believe is so important for those of you that are single or divorced and want to have a healthy relationship. Someone can talk to you every day and still not be building a relationship with you. They can text you, they can call you, they can say, I miss you, they can send you funny videos, pictures, or songs that remind them of you. They can answer your questions, flirt with you, even genuinely care about you. But talking is not the same thing as building. Sometimes people remain in contact with you for whatever reasons without helping the relationship grow. Sometimes they give you attention without giving you effort. Sometimes they say the right words, but then when it comes to their behaviors, they're not demonstrating closeness and commitment. And this is why the most important question you can ask yourself is not, does this person like me? The better question is this person building with me? Because real connection takes more than words. It takes curiosity, right? Asking questions. It takes responsiveness. It takes honesty. It takes mutual effort. Yes, you want a reciprocal relationship. So reciprocity is very important. And it takes follow through. And it takes two people who want to know about each other and want to be known. None of this guarded, I'm reserved, or I'm only going to share what I feel is I'm comfortable sharing. No, you have to let yourself be exposed. Research actually shows, true statement, this is actually a really interesting thing I want to share with you, is that relationship researchers have a term called perceived partner responsiveness. I know it's like a big, it sounds like a lot, but just hold on, and I'm going to explain this. What that means is it describes the experiences that people have when they're feeling from another person that person understands them, values them, and cares about what matters to them. So research has found that perceived partner responsiveness predicts intimacy with small to medium effects. So it predicts intimacy with small to medium effects, and I'm going to explain what that means in a second. And it predicts relationship satisfaction with medium to large effects. So, in terms of how satisfied a person is, the perceived partner responsiveness is huge. In plain language, what that means is one of the strongest indicators of connection is not simply whether someone responds or is talking to you, like I was talking earlier about. It's whether their actual response to you leaves you feeling understood, appreciated, and cared for. So, the amount of the frequency matters in a relationship, but that just measures how in touch you are with someone. It just measures contact with the person. Responsiveness measures connection, and consistency tells you whether a relationship is actually being built. So that's what we're going to explore today. So why do some conversations feel so hard? Well, have you ever talked to someone and felt like you're doing all the work? You ask the question, they give you a short answer. You ask another question, they give you another short answer. But then they never ask anything about you. You share something meaningful, they reply with one sentence. So frustrating. I know, very frustrating. And you tell them about something important in your life. They say, that's nice. And then they move on to the next thing. You ask what they're doing this weekend. They tell you, but they never ask what you're doing. You send a thoughtful message. Maybe it's something that's really important to them. They respond to one small part of that and then ignore something else that you shared. After a while, the conversation begins to feel like an interview. It feels like you're not being listened to. You certainly don't feel acknowledged or valued. You're asking all the questions. You're generating that energy. You're creating the warmth, right? You're giving the conversation somewhere to go, and the other person is only responding. That does not automatically mean that someone is a narcissist, okay? Because I know that word is tossed out around a lot. It doesn't mean they're bad, selfish. It doesn't mean that they're completely unsafe right away or emotionally unavailable. They may be busy, they may be shy, they may not know you well, they may communicate with fewer words, maybe they're nervous or distracted. One short response is not enough evidence to judge someone's character. And I say this because in the single world, we often judge right away and say, red flag, red flag. I'm saying that's not enough to judge them. But when the same thing happens repetitively, it becomes a pattern. That is more information. The person may be talking to you, but that's when they're not building with you, is when you see it over and over. It's a pattern. So recently, a woman answered one of my polls. The question was, if you joined a group focused on real connection, growth, and healthy relationships, what would you be excited most about? She selected being around growth-minded people. So I liked the work she was doing. I looked at her profile and I decided I'm going to reach out. I want to build a connection with this person. I shared that I spent 12 years in 12-step recovery programs. I also told her that I admired her work supporting sobriety among executives because she is very much immersed in the 12-step programs and 12-step recovery. Well, then I asked whether she believed it was difficult to meet growth-minded people because she answered that that was the most important thing to her in the poll, or that's what I assumed was important to her because that's what she answered. But I wanted to get clarification. She ended up responding back to me, and she just said something like, it's not difficult at all to meet growth minded people. She believed more people were growth minded than we realized. So that made me curious. So I asked what she meant when she selected that answer in the poll. Why did being around growth minded people actually matter to her? Was it because she wanted honest conversations, accountability, new ideas, emotional safety? She responded, emotional safety for sure. That was the entire answer. So later, I ended up following up with her on what emotional safety actually meant to her. And she said, or she described emotional safety as being able to talk about feelings without judgment or comparison. And yes, that's part of emotional safety, but that's not the whole picture. She did not owe me a long response. She did not do anything cruel. I don't see her as a bad person, but a short answer does not prove that someone lacks emotional intelligence or relationship skills. But the exchange, because every answer was short and I had to dig and dig, it helped me recognize something really important. A person can say they value emotional safety while giving little back in a conversation. A person can want to feel understood while showing very little curiosity about the person speaking to them. A person can say they want deeper relationships while offering responses that do not deepen the conversation. That does not make them a bad person, but it does reveal a gap between what they say they value and what they currently know how to create. So in this current situation, like I said, the person's not a bad person. But because this was a pattern, I saw the pattern in her responses. The person does not know how to generate that emotional safety that is important in a relationship. And that is the gap. Answering a question is not the same thing as connecting. And this is one of the biggest ideas in this episode that I want to hone in. That's so important that I wish I knew years ago. Answering a question is not always the same as connecting with the person who asked it. So imagine that someone asks, why do you value, or what do you value about being around growth-minded people? A short answer might be emotional safety. Technically, that answers a question, but it does not give the other person much to connect with. A fuller answer might be something like this: emotional safety matters to me because I value people who can talk honestly without judging or comparing another person. I also enjoy being around people who ask thoughtful questions and help me consider new perspectives. What does emotional safety mean to you? Aha! Not only did you answer it fully, but now you're asking me the question: what does it mean to me? That answer does more. Can you see the difference? It shares something meaningful. It explains why the subject matters to you. So I get to know a little bit more about you and what you're feeling about that subject. It gives the other person, which is me, something to respond to. And it shows reciprocal curiosity. That is the difference between answering and connecting. An answer says, here's the information you requested. Connection says, I'm willing to let you know me. Building says, I'm willing to help carry this connection with you. I want to continue this connection with you. Now, research on perceived partner responsiveness reinforces this distinction. Responsiveness is not just replying to someone, it involves communicating and understanding, validating, and actually caring. Studies have also found that on days when people perceive greater responsiveness from their partners, they reported greater relationship satisfaction. Real responsiveness communicates. It communicates, I heard what you said. I understand why it matters. Your experience matters to me, and I want to remain connected with you. I want to remain engaged with you. So, emotional safety is more than talking about feelings. Many people define emotional safety as I can talk about my feelings without being judged. Like I said, that certainly is a part of it. You should be able to say you're sad when someone's making fun of you or mocking you, or you feel judged by them. You should be able to say you feel hurt without immediately being called dramatic, needy, or oversensitive, or dismissed, or talked over. You should be able to talk about your struggles with someone without them dismissing you or saying other people may have it worse than you, or you shouldn't feel that way, or don't feel that way. But emotional safety is bigger than being permitted to speak or being or just talking about your feelings. It's also what happens after you speak. Does the other person become curious? Do they ask a thoughtful follow-up question? Do they try to understand what the experience was like for you? Can they listen without making the entire conversation about themselves? Can they disagree without feeling insulted? Can they tell you they need time instead of disappearing? Can they return and finish an uncomfortable conversation? Or do they say, I can't talk, can't commit? Or they end up blocking or ghosting you? Can they say, I misunderstood what you meant? Can they admit when they are becoming defensive? Can they apologize? Can they help repair the connection after something goes wrong or something they did? Emotional safety is not only about whether you're allowed to have feelings and talk about them. It's it's about how another person responds when you express them. So a fuller definition might be emotional safety means you share your thoughts, feelings, needs, questions, boundaries, and differences without being mocked, punished, controlled, deliberately dismissed, or threatened with abandonment. Where this becomes really important is when someone may criticize you, not intentionally, but it may seem like a criticism to you. They might say that they felt triggered when you abruptly hung up on them. You might feel like that's an attack, but it's not. How you respond to that, that's whether or not they're going to feel connected to you or dismissed. That's the important part. And that's what builds that healthy relationship connection. What that also means is both people bring enough honesty, curiosity, care, accountability, and follow through for trust to grow in the relationship. Emotional safety is not only the absence of something harmful, or let me say it this way, it's not only when you're talking about your feelings and not feeling judged by them. It's also the presence of curiosity, responsiveness, reciprocity, respect, honesty, healthy boundaries, the ability to tolerate discomfort. When something or someone rubs you the wrong way, are you able to tolerate that? Or do you become defensive and you want to cut them off right away? And it's the willingness to repair. Emotional safety appears in ordinary moments. It is not demonstrated only by major relationship conversations or major conflicts. It appears in small, ordinary moments. If someone asks, "How are you?" many of us automatically say, "I'm fine," or "I'm okay." That answers the question, but it does not offer much opportunity for connection because I don't know much about you. You don't know much about the person when they say, "I'm fine, I'm okay." A slightly more open answer could be, "I'm doing okay. I had a stressful morning, but something encouraging happened at work that helped me get through the day." And that's not oversharing. You're not revealing your entire story to a stranger. You're giving the other person some additional piece of information to know a little bit more about you. Now, they have somewhere to go. They can ask, "What made your morning stressful?" Or "What encouraging thing happened at work? I'd love to hear about it." There is a large space between telling someone almost nothing and disclosing everything before trust has been earned. Both is black and white, and they're extremes. You can share one extra thought, one small example, one feeling, one reason something matters to you. You can also ask the question back. Those small choices help create connection. They also show you whether both people are participating in the relationship. Relationship researcher John Gottman, I love this guy, okay? Love this guy. He refers to those everyday attempts at connection as bids. A bid might sound like, "Look at this. Listen to what happened today. How was your meeting? Do you want to take a walk?" It could be a sigh, a touch. You're touching them using body language, a joke. It could be a funny video. Gottman reports that in the 6-year study of newlyweds, couples who remain married turn towards one another's bids approximately 86% of the time in the laboratory. Couples who later divorced turn towards their bids approximately 33% of the time. That does not mean healthy people respond perfectly to 86% of everything their partner says. This is not a universal score you need to impose in every conversation. The point is that stable couples constantly noticed and responded to each other's attempts to connect far more often. They did not merely just coexist. They repeatedly turned toward one another. That simple question, like, "What about you?" may seem insignificant, but small moments are often where emotional trust is built or slowly lost. Reciprocity means effort moves in both directions. Another important element of connection is reciprocity. Reciprocity means care and effort moves in both directions. It does not mean every message may be the same length. It does not mean we keep a spreadsheet and count how many questions each person asks. It does not mean that because I sent 3 paragraphs, you owe me 3 paragraphs. Relationships are not mathematically equal in every individual moment. Sometimes one person has more energy. Sometimes one person needs more support. Sometimes one person is dealing with work, grief, illness, parenting, or another difficult season. Healthy reciprocity is measured over time. So if I regularly ask you questions, do you sometimes ask about me? If I share something important, do you acknowledge what I said? If I initiate most of our conversations, do you ever initiate? If I suggest spending time together, do you help turn the idea into a plan? If I remember what matters to you, do you show interest in what matters to me? If I send you a thoughtful message and you constantly answer with the smallest possible response, I may begin to feel that my effort's not being met, not because short messages are wrong, but because the pattern may be telling me this person is not meeting me at the same level. When what that happens repetitively becomes a pattern, one person begins carrying the relationship. And when one person is carrying it, two people are not building it. So when you send paragraphs and receive fragments, this is what happens. Some people put a lot of thought into their communication. They explain what happened, they share how they feel, they ask questions, they try to be clear because they want to avoid misunderstandings. They don't want to go into assumptions because we know what assumptions do to us. Then the other person responds to one tiny part and ignores the rest. Again, one short reply is not automatically a problem. Someone may be working, they may be tired, they may not have the emotional capacity to respond thoughtfully at the moment. A healthy response might be, I can see that you put a lot of thought into this. I want to respond when I have enough time to really be present with with this message. That message communicates, I see your effort, I'm not ignoring you. And this matters enough for me to return it. But the problem arises when one person continually offers care, thought, and vulnerability, while the other consistently gives the least engagement possible. Or when you ask a question and the person sort of ghosts, they don't respond back to it because they're not comfortable or for whatever reason, don't respond. When one person is no longer simply participating, they're maintaining the entire connection. When someone is not meeting your effort, do not abandon yourself trying to earn more engagement, okay? Do not explain the same point five different ways. Don't send longer and longer messages hoping the other person will finally become curious. Don't automatically decide that you're confusing, you're too intense, too emotional, or because the other person is not meeting you. Sometimes you may need to communicate more clearly, but sometimes the issue is not your explanation. Sometimes it's simply a mismatch. You may want curiosity, depth, want a mutual relationship, honest exchange. And the other person may want to answer the question and move on. Neither person has anything wrong, but you have to recognize that you're carrying the interaction by yourself. That happened to me during the conversation when the women who answered the poll. I tried to explain that emotional safety is not only the ability to speak without judgment, it's also about reciprocity. When someone reaches towards you, do you respond in a way that allows the connection to develop? Do you offer enough for them to understand you? Do you ask questions back? Do you show interest in what they're trying to communicate? She told me she was still not sure what I meant. In the past, I might have kept going, given her five different responses. I might have written several more paragraphs. I might have searched for another example. I may have worked harder to make her understand an idea she was showing very little curiosity about. But this time I stopped. I wrote, no worries. I may not be explaining it clearly. I'm referring to the difference between simply answering a question and responding in a way that gives the other person something to connect with. It's something I explore in my work through relationship skills. And thanks for sharing your perspective. That's it. And I felt proud of myself, not because I won the conversation, not because I convinced her. I felt proud because I did not abandon myself to keep the conversation alive. I gave one clear explanation. Then I allowed the interaction to end. That, my friend, is growth. That is growth. So sometimes Emotional maturity is not finding a better way to explain yourself. Sometimes it's recognizing this person is not meeting me here. The conversation is not developing. And I do not have to work harder and put more effort to manufacture mutual interests. You can be kind without chasing. You can clarify without chronically over explaining. You can respect another person's communication style without pretending that it works for you. You can recognize a mismatch without making the other person the villain. When effort is not being returned, do not perform for connection, okay? Do not perform. Notice it as a pattern, adjust your investment, protect your energy, and that's it. And then move on. I spent 12 years in 12-step recovery programs. And these programs taught me a great deal. They taught me how to share honestly. They taught me how to listen better. They taught me how to examine my own behavior because we have something called the 4th and the 10th step where you do your own inventory and really look at your part in relationships. They taught me how to talk about my feelings. But even with all that work, I was still confused about relationships. People would say, I'll call you. Then they would never call. They would say, I miss you. But then they would never make plans to see me. They would ask, how are you? But they would not ask a follow-up question. Sometimes I would ask a question that made someone uncomfortable. Instead of saying, I don't want to answer that, or I feel uncomfortable answering that, or I need some time to think about it, they would ignore the question. It would make them feel uncomfortable and they would just ignore it. I would hear nothing from them. I spent years wondering why people say they cared but showed very little curiosity. Why did they say they missed me without making any effort? Why did they talk about honesty and support while their relationships remained one-sided? Eventually, I learned something really important, okay? And I'm going to share this with you all. Knowing the language of healing does not automatically mean someone knows how to build a relationship. A person can talk about accountability and still fail to follow through. A person can share deeply in a recovery meeting and ask nothing about you. A person can understand their childhood and still struggle to create a healthy relationship today. Self-awareness matters. It does. But self-awareness without new behaviors is incomplete. Words matter, but patterns tell you what these words can actually build. Now, I miss you should eventually become action. A person may genuinely miss you. Their feelings may be sincere. But in a healthy relationship, feelings usually begin turning into behavior. Feelings have to turn into behavior in a healthy relationship. I'm going to say that, okay? They have to. I miss you needs to become a phone call, a plan, a message asking how you are, a question about something you shared last week, an effort to spend time together. A person can miss you privately inside their own mind. But if none of that feeling reaches the relationship, if none of it turns into an action, you're allowed to notice that gap. The question is not only, do they feel something? The question is, do they care? Does their care, do they care enough where they shift the care into a behavior? Does their care become a behavior? Feelings may demonstrate interests. Behavior shows whether someone is capable of building. Sincerity and ability are not the same thing, okay? Sincerity and ability are not the same thing. Someone can sincerely care about you and still lack the skills, courage, capacity, or willingness required for the relationship that you want. And this is when curiosity sounds like criticism. I had another experience with my trainer at the gym. He told me that he grew up without much money and he loved receiving books. I asked him, have you ever felt as though an author was almost like a friend while you were reading? What I meant was simply, sometimes a book makes us feel understood. Sometimes an author gives language to experiences we've never been able to explain. Sometimes reading helps us feel less alone. But he replied, are you saying I don't have any friends? I said no and explained what I meant. But he continued hearing my question as a judgment about his social life. The original conversation disappeared, and when I asked him, what did you hear? All he heard is, you're telling me I don't have any friends. Instead of discussing books, I had to continue proving that I was not insulting him. Later I asked what he was doing that weekend. He told me, but he did not ask anything about my weekend. So I stopped trying to create a deeper conversation and focused on my workout. One misunderstanding does not make him emotionally unsafe. But every one of us can misunderstand people. We're human. But the more revealing question is, what happens after the misunderstanding? Can the person say, oh, I understand what you meant now? Can they update their interpretation after receiving new information? Or do they remain attached to the most negative meaning and require you to keep defending yourself? Emotionally safe people can revise their understanding. They do not force you to spend the entire interaction proving that you have no harmful intentions. And you should not have to audition endlessly for the role of a safe person. You can explain yourself clearly, but you cannot force another person to become curious about your explanation. Healthy conversation is not an interview, okay? It's not an interview. Healthy conversation moves in both directions. It should not feel as though one person is conducting an interview while the other person is merely answering questions. When someone asks about your weekend, a simple response is, what about you? That small question communicates, I do not only want to be known, I also want to know you. When someone never asks questions back, the conversation becomes one-sided. Eventually, you may stop sharing, you may stop asking, you may remain on the surface, not because you don't want a connection, but because the other person has shown you that curiosity will create more work rather than closeness. Research defines responsiveness partly as the degree to which a partner communicates, understands, validates, and care. You do not need someone to conduct a therapy session every time you speak. But you do need enough evidence that your inner world matters to them. Being invited is not the same as feeling wanted, okay? Words can also reveal how much relational risk someone is willing to take. Imagine that someone says, next time you're in Houston, I want to openly invite you for coffee or tea if you like. That's polite. Technically, it's an invitation. Now compare it with, I would love to see you for coffee or tea the next time you're in Houston. Those two sentences don't feel the same, right? They don't feel the same. The first says, you may reach out if you want. The second says, I want to see you. One offers permission, the other communicates desire, the desire to actually want to see you. One leaves the door unlocked, the other person opens the door and moves towards you. That does not mean casual wording is automatically a red flag. Some people are informal. Some people are afraid of appearing too eager. They're afraid to be vulnerable. Some people fear rejection. But if someone continually leaves all the emotional and practical risks to you, pay attention. Do you always want to reach out? Do you always make the plan? Do you always clarify their vague statements? Do you always decide whether the relationship moves forward? Clear words help create safety. Chronically vague words keep people guessing. Connection should not require constant interpretation. When someone says the right romantic words, we're going to talk about that, okay, what that looks like. There is also someone who has shown romantic interest in me. Okay. And I'm going to tell you a very personal statement. He says many of the things a woman would love hearing. He says, "It was nice hearing your voice. I miss you." He sends things I enjoy reading about. Those gestures to me are not meaningless. I do not believe every kind word is manipulation or anything like that. But words alone are not enough for the relationship I want. He knows that relationships and emotional availability are central to my life and work. I have asked whether he would complete one of the assessments I used that would learn more about how we relate to each other. Not to test him, it's not to diagnose him, it's not to judge him, it's not to force him to become someone else. I wanted us to learn together about each other, but he has not shown that interest. He also asked very few questions about the work and ideas that matter deeply to me. He may send me something I like, but rarely continues the conversation. There's little follow up, little curiosity. And that is what creates disconnection for me. Because someone who can be attracted to you without being curious about you in the way that you need. Someone can enjoy your voice without wanting to understand your inner world. Someone can miss you without knowing how to build a healthy partnership. Someone can mean every loving word they say and still be unable to offer what you need. Again, sincerity and ability are not the same thing. So let's get into, does the person like me or can this person build with me? Many singles ask, does this person like me? And that's understandable. But think about how much pressure you put on yourself to think and have to be like, does this person like me? What do they think about me? I would go to a more useful question, and that is, can this person build a healthy relationship with me? Do they ask questions? Do they follow through? Do they show interest in your world? Do they communicate when something becomes uncomfortable? Do they participate in making plans with you? Do they have a temper? Oh, that's a huge one. Or are they able to emotionally regulate, especially when something bothers you about something that they did? Do they help repair misunderstandings or make it all about them? Do they invest effort without constantly being pushed? Do their responses communicate that your thoughts and feelings matter to them? Because a person can like you and still be an unhealthy choice for you. A person can care about you and still lack important relationship skills. A person can feel chemistry with you and still be completely incompatible with you. That does not make them evil. It does not make them a narcissist. It means like someone, what it means liking someone and being capable of partnering with them are different questions. Talking tells you there's contact. Building tells you there's movement. And finding love and preparing for love are two totally different things. And we're going to talk about that because I also want to make an important distinction. I believe finding the right person happens in God's timing. We cannot control exactly when someone enters our life. We cannot force healthy love to appear. We cannot make someone show up simply because we completed enough healing work. What matters is doing the work. Doing the work does not mean I'm healthy now, so God owe me a partner. Preparation is not a transaction we make with God. I'm not saying that better communication will make a partner. What I'm saying is that better communication, it's not that better communication is going to make a partner appear faster. Relationship skills do not allow us to control love. I'm talking about preparation here. So we may not control when a person enters our life because we can't. We can't control when a person enters our life, but we can prepare ourselves to evaluate that person wisely. We can learn the difference between chemistry and compatibility. We can learn the difference between words and follow through. We can recognize whether effort moves in both directions. We can stop following in love primarily with potential. We can learn to recognize emotional availability. We can learn to leave relationships that remain painfully one sided. And it's tough. It's tough leaving them, and it's tough, but clarity is power. Clarity is power. And we have to live in the reality. If they're one sided and it's a pattern, you know what to do. And when a healthy person does enter our life, we can learn how to build alongside them. We can remain curious. We can communicate clearly. We can repair misunderstandings. We can receive healthy love instead of distrusting or pushing it away. We can allow commitment to develop gradually rather than demanding immediate certainty. Rather than getting head over heels for someone right away. Remember, trust takes time. Trust is earned. It is earned. There are millions of people trying to navigate this challenge, and I'm in this with you all. That's why I'm so interested in talking about this, because I have a stake in this too, because I'm single and I have done so much of the preparation work, but the person doesn't just appear at your door. We would love for that to happen, but the person will prepare, will come in God's time. It's just, we can't control that. Pew Research Center analysis found that 42% of American adults were living without a spouse or romantic partner in 2023. 42% of Americans are in the single category. And in a separate Pew survey conducted in 2022, 42% of single Americans said they were looking for a committed relationship. And that included also casual dates. These statistics do not tell us why every person is single or what kind of relationship they want, but they show that many people are trying to distinguish between receiving attention and finding someone capable of partnership. The challenge here is not simply finding someone interested in you. It is recognizing someone who is interested, compatible, emotionally capable, and willing to build. And finding love will happen, but in God's timing. Preparing for healthy love is work that you can do now, that we can all do now. And I'm going to tell you this, that choosing a healthy partner takes more than chemistry. Chemistry can feel powerful, but chemistry cannot answer every important question. Chemistry may tell you that you're drawn to someone, you're attracted to them, but it cannot tell you whether they'll follow through. Attraction may tell you that you enjoy being near someone. It cannot tell you how they'll behave during conflict. Romantic words can make you feel desired, but they cannot tell you whether someone can build trust. A healthy partner does not need to be perfect, because God forbid, none of us are perfect, but they need to demonstrate enough healthy behavior for trust to develop. Can they be curious about you? Can they be honest? Can they listen to your feelings? Can they remain present when something becomes uncomfortable? Or do they get angry or want to disappear? Can they admit when they misunderstood you? Can they apologize? Can they follow through? Can they make effort? Can they show that they want you without requiring you to do all the pursuing? Choosing a healthy partner means evaluating the pattern, not only how someone makes you feel today, but how their repeated behavior is capable of building over time. Because nice, I'm telling you, does not mean emotionally safe. Just because someone is not openly mean does not automatically mean they are emotionally safe, or that someone that says, I go with the flow, or you can do whatever you want, or this doesn't bother me. Be aware of those people, because trust me, something always bothers us. Something always bothers us. So the nice does not mean emotionally safe. Okay? I'm just going to bring that up. Just because someone is not openly mean does not mean they are emotionally safe. Some people are pleasant and agreeable. They say yes. They avoid obvious conflict. They tell you what they want to hear or what you want to hear. But internally, they're the ones to be alarmed about because internally they're building silent resentment. They are not maybe showing you right away that they're upset. But when someone's always agreeable, there is resentment bound to come about because we can't agree with everything. We have opinions, we have desires, we have needs. So silently, these people are building resentment. They may disappear instead of discussing a problem with you or get aggravated or angry. They may act as though everything is fine until they suddenly end the relationship. That is not emotional safety. That's avoidance disguised as peace. Other people may be distant or defensive. They may answer questions coldly. They may interpret curiosity as criticism. They may require you to work hard for every piece of connection because they're only willing to share certain parts of themselves. Again, one short answer or one awkward moment does not prove someone's unsafe. Look for patterns. Can they be honest without being cruel? Can they disagree with you without disappearing? Can they listen to your feelings without dismissing them? Can they acknowledge how their behavior affected you? Can they show interest without making you carry the interaction? Can they repair a problem? Emotional safety is not measured by how nice someone appears during easy moments. It's revealed by what they repeatedly do when honesty, vulnerability, disappointment, or discomfort enters a relationship. Some people are performing nearly all the emotional labor in their relationships. They initiate every meaningful conversation. They monitor every shift in another person's mood. They ask all the questions. They explain every misunderstanding. They make the plans. They attempt to repair every conflict. They send paragraphs and receive fragments. They keep the relationship alive through constant effort. I was that person. Okay, I'm describing me. All of this is describing me. That's why I want this to be as real as possible for you to see, yeah, this was me in the past. This is what I used to do. Eventually, what happens? The relationship begins to feel like a job at work. You're not experiencing this, you're managing it. And because the other person is not obviously cruel, you may tell yourself the relationship must be healthy because they're not abusive. They didn't hit me. They didn't yell at me, maybe here and there, but not a lot. But a relationship can contain no obvious abuse and still leave you feeling emotionally alone. Someone does not have to be a terrible person to be a poor partner for you. They may simply lack the capacity, desire, or compatibility required to build the relationship that you need. You're not supposed to become the relationship's project manager, therapist, activities director, translator, an entire emotional support department. A relationship should require effort, but it should not require one person to generate all the life inside of it. So do not try to pull depth out of people, okay? This is one of the lessons I'm still learning. I do not need to pull depth out of people. If someone gives me a short answer, I can offer one additional opening. If they still do not engage, I can stop. If someone misunderstands me, I can explain myself once. I do not need to spend the rest of the conversation proving that I'm good or I'm a safe person. If someone asks me questions, I do not have to keep interviewing them. If someone says they miss me, but don't move towards me, I do not have to fill the gaps with hope. If someone says they want to see me, but leave no plans, they don't plan anything, I do not have to pretend that feels mutual. If someone constantly meets thoughtful messages with minimal responses, I do not need to send even more. I can observe. I can let their behaviors give me information. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they're afraid. Maybe they communicate differently. Maybe they're not interested. Maybe they'll never learn these skills needed. Whatever the explanation, I do not need to work twice as hard to create a relationship by myself. Because that's not punishment. That's not making them into a villain and a bad person. It's discernment. So I'm going to give you a 5-part relationship scorecard, okay? This is going to be super useful, and I wish I had this many years ago. So high achievers, I know you often trust as high achievers, I know you often trust what you can observe. And you love frameworks. You love evidence. You want to know what you're measuring. So instead of asking, how strongly do I feel about this person? We're going to do this evaluation, okay? This is going to evaluate the relationship across all 5 areas. The first one is curiosity. Does this person ask questions? Do they remember your answers? Do they show an interest in understanding how you think and what matters to you? The second is responsiveness. When you share something meaningful, do their responses leave you feeling heard and understood? Do they respond to what you actually said, or do they dismiss it or turn the conversation back towards themselves? The third is reciprocity. Does effort move in both directions? Do they contribute ideas, energy, and care? Or does the connection disappear whenever you stop carrying it? Reliability is number 4. Do their words become behavior? Hugely important. Actions speak louder than words. Remember that. When they say they'll call you, do they call you? When they say they're going to follow up with you, do they follow up? When they say they want to see you, do they create a plan? When they make a commitment, do they follow through or communicate honestly when they can't? Because it's okay sometimes we change our mind. Things happen, but it's important to communicate that clearly. And the 5th is repair. Really important. When something goes wrong, can they return to the conversation? Especially when it's about them or something that you did or they did that hurt your feelings. Can they clarify? Can they listen? Can they admit their part? Can they apologize and make an adjustment? Now, you could rate each category from 1 to 5, not because love should be a spreadsheet, but because, and not because love, should be a spreadsheet. And it's not because a person who receives a 17 is automatically wrong for you, or like on a scale of 1 to 10, they're a 1 in this category right now. And it's not because every interaction needs to be scored or you need to score everything that they did against you. The purpose is to interrupt the tendency to let chemistry erase evidence. Because one disappointing conversation is not a pattern. One delayed message that is coming through is not abandonment. One misunderstanding does not mean someone is emotionally unsafe. But consistently low scores in several areas is information for you, because your emotions matter. And so does the behavioral data that's created from someone's repeated choices, from someone's repeated habits. So the questions to ask yourself is, think about someone you're dating, talking to, or hoping to build a relationship with. Ask yourself, do I feel heard, or do I only receive answers? Does this person ask meaningful questions about me? When I share something important, do they respond to what I actually said? Do they ever initiate contact? Do they help make plans? Do they follow through? When they say they miss me, do I feel missed? When they say they care, do I feel known? When they say they want to see me, do I feel wanted? When I send a thoughtful message, do I feel received? Or do I feel compelled to explain myself repeatedly? When I stop asking questions, does the conversation stop? When I stop reaching out, does the relationship disappear? Am I matching the effort being offered, or am I abandoning myself to keep the connection alive? Are they simply talking to me, or are they building with me? And perhaps most importantly, this is most importantly to ask, do I feel more like myself around this person? Or do I become careful, quiet, anxious, and responsible for holding everything together? Because these answers matter. Your answers matter to these questions. Someone can talk to you every day without building a relationship with you. They can answer, they can flirt, they can say they miss you, they can keep the conversation alive just enough to keep you hopeful. But real connection requires participation. It requires curiosity, responsiveness, reciprocity, honesty, effort, follow through, and the willingness to repair. It requires two people who want to know and be known. And remember, finding the right person is going to happen. Okay, it's going to happen for you. Just be patient, trust the process. It's all in God's timing, because we cannot control when love arrives. I mean, I would love to just wave a magic wand and say, here, this is when my partner arrives, but we cannot control that. But what we can control is the amount of preparation we do. We can learn how to recognize emotional availability. We can stop confusing attention with effort. We can stop confusing words with ability. We can stop confusing chemistry with compatibility. We can notice whether effort is moving in both directions. We can stop choosing people only because initial feelings are intense. That's chemistry, my friends, but that's not compatibility. We can start choosing people whose behavior makes trust possible. We can stop abandoning ourselves to keep one-sided conversations alive. We can recognize a mismatch without condemning ourselves or the other person. And when healthy love arrives, we can know how to build it. We can ask questions, we can listen, we can clarify, we can respond, we can follow through, we can repair, we can remain present. Oh my gosh, remaining present is just so important. We can allow trust to grow. And this is how healthy relationship becomes a lasting commitment. It's not because two people never misunderstand each other. That is always going to happen. It's not because two people respond perfectly every time. It's not because two people are never afraid. It's not because two people continue um, being imperfect, because we are going to be imperfect. It's because these two people continue choosing to meet each other. They meet each other with honesty, with curiosity, effort, kindness, courage, and with the willingness to keep building something real. Thank you for listening to Becoming Emotionally Available. And before you go, I want to leave you with this one question. Are they merely talking to you, or are they building with you? And the other thing I want to leave with you is, are you becoming the person for an emotionally available relationship? Go through this and listen to it as many times as you can, and listen to it from your perspective. Are you doing some of these behaviors that are creating unsafe relationships? Because our relationships are only as safe as we are inside. So remember that. And if you're interested, go ahead and you can message me. I am on LinkedIn. I am on Facebook. You can find me. Or you can email me at dagmar@breakthepatterns.com. And I will send you a quiz that will show you where you are in terms of, are you someone ready to build? And if you're not, I have tools, resources, and I can be the guide also to guide you in the right direction. Well, until next time, and thank you for listening.